What I'm saying is, why couldn't one cop, like the old days, go, you fucking kids, listen, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to get out of the street. Anybody still in the street is going to be arrested. If you resist, that's going to be an additional charge. You might want to know it's a felony. Have we moved beyond the day to where someone can actually talk with a megaphone and instruct the children, get out of the road, otherwise I'm going to go medieval on your ass or some shit. Instead, no. Let's just bring out the cops, and they could be monkeys too. And they could all run out, and then the people can go, This is why they need us. This is why they need us, Kyle. This is why we need the riot cops. Isn't it so great? We need the state now to protect us from the anti-statists, who aren't really anti-statists because they're blocking traffic. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, and I just pulled up the footage, so maybe I can play maybe a few minutes of that. But yeah, I see what you mean, and I would just like to have people just keep in mind that there is such a thing as a tragedy of the commons. There is kind of a problem, just one more a value-free, economic basis, that when you have this kind of government-owned, or what some people would call publicly owned property, you're going to have these kind of clashes and conflicts, because at least with private property, there are expected norms of behavior, depending on, the property owner and what their values are and all that. And so let me put it this way. It's a lot clearer as to what's counted as trespassing versus not trespassing. The problem with public property is that, well, a lot of the conflicts, a lot of what you just described, is pretty much all exclusively associated with public property for the most part, whether we're talking about a public road or we're talking about a park. I think there was another incident that took place at a park, and I think we'll get to maybe that in a minute. But that's something else I want people to keep in mind. Just keep the tragedy of the commons in mind. Okay, so the video you mentioned is called Wild Footage, Portland Riot Cops Arrest 14 Anti-Trump Protesters for Blocking Traffic. The date of the occurrence was this past January the 25th, 2017. Here we go.
And see, this nature of screaming and whatnot, also a very Portland thing. I'll save my comments on that for afterwards.
Yeah, I got something to say too.
You're going crazy, why? You don't have the Bible. So, will you do this? Will you...
People here, this is serious. Do not joke about hitting people.
Isn't she just a doll? Oh, yeah, I could see her arguing with me over coffee over something stupid. Okay, for those that can't see what's going on, a TriMet bus is honking, and a crowd's right in front of it.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to turn that down so I wouldn't kill the audience's ears too much. But there's like a couple more minutes of that kind of thing. So yeah,
Actually, go forward a little bit. We're gonna hear one guy go, "Hey, do you got a job?" And the guy's dumb enough to tell him where he works, and the guy's like, "Good, I'm gonna come to your work, so you lose your job." So that's illustrating how psycho just Portlanders are in general. So this guy's attacking the protester, going, "Where do you work?" The guy tells him, and the guy says, "Yeah, I'm gonna come fuck with you." So I mean, there's a lot of that back and forth. And then how nice is that to cheer on the police and say, "Thanks guys for doing your job." Well, isn't that kind of being a dick anyways? The cops, like, they weren't like, "Well, thank you for cheering us on, young man," and saying, "Thank you for doing your job." Actually, the guy sounded like a dick when he said that. It's like, "Hey, thank you for doing your job." Well, what are you saying? Are you saying they don't normally do their job? So it's like the police in Portland got to deal with shit all the fucking time. And me saying that doesn't make me a cop or make me pro-cop. I'm saying, okay, I haven't even said this yet in the podcast, and I said it in my Real Portlandia episode. The first mental hospital for the state of Portland, for the state of Oregon, was in Portland, and they put it on Hawthorne. Hawthorne now is like the epicenter of like the hippie trendy area, but it's really full of a bunch of like fake hippies and very materialistic. How perfect that the first state mental hospital was right there off 12th and Hawthorne. And so if you, and for entertainment, if someone wants to learn more about Portland, don't just watch these Portland protest videos, watch the Portland City Council videos each week. They go up on Wednesday. and then watch the past, and watch how these people that are literally like having a mental health crisis come week after week after week. You know, there's like the people that are like our suit and tie type of people that are like, you know, left brain, their shirts pressed. They woke up in a bed this morning. They had a full breakfast. They're part of the half class of Portland, and they're there representing the business alliance. So what are you going to do about the homeless? Then in the other corner, literally, it looked last year and the year before, and in the other corner, dun, 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 it's the homeless activist social justice warriors. And what you got with that situation is you got people like looking to the city and looking to, I think the city could do more to manage the Portland homeless problem is what I'm saying. But it's not just about the city and the police walking around with blankets, making sure nobody's cold at night. Like, what the fuck? Nobody thinks like this in America. If anything, they think, what about community? Community. You know what I mean? Like community, not like big government fixing everything for you. And that's what some of the Portlanders sound like when they're down there. That government has to fix everybody's fucking problems and fix things. And so what I'm saying is it draws that type of activism more so than the self-sufficient, hey folks, let's trend set. Every now and then, though, no. You do see that in Portland. I'm not going to take that away from people that have spearheaded things I know nothing about, because it is a city like others to where great ideas have sprouted, sometimes within the city. But from the most part, because I was home free for a year there, and I was, for people that know my story, but I can say it in less than 30 seconds, I had a history of exposing corruption on Access TV and reporting things from a liberty perspective, non-left, non-right. And yet, because I was openly home free and talked about it on my show, I think there was some assumption that I must have been on drugs because I was home free, or there must have been some catch because I was way too intelligent, apparently, to end up on the, and that's what actually some people said, and that hurt my feelings. I literally, there's no way, dude. You're too intelligent. You have too much there must be something. And seeing, to me, that was evil, Kyle. That was like, wait a minute. I was actually born here, and you guys are judging me. And I'm sleeping in my vehicle. And yet you guys are having like near riots, like acting like you're having a mental health crisis, like breaking down in front of the fucking mayor. Like the world is ending, like this is the apocalypse, because they won't give a homeless guy a fucking sandwich. Well, you left your brother Alex Ansary out in the street and there was nowhere for me to park. There's literally a guy, Kyle, by the name of Mike Bluehair, which is like one of the city's top social justice warriors, which during that brief period in which I was staying on his couch because I went to the store with his girlfriend, he somehow woke up on the wrong side of the bed. And, you know, I don't want to go into too much personal stuff. What I'm saying is one of the top activists, and I constantly recount this story because it's the epicenter of what fakeness is, hypocritical is. The same person who I've seen raise his voice in a dominant manner towards his girlfriend, which he met through me. I saw this guy order me out of his house, and that was the last time I actually talked to him because he never acted that way before. And it was almost as if he's thinking, dude, I'm the dude now living in a regular house with a woman. You're the dude homeless. I'm going to act bent and insecure as a male because you went to the store with her for groceries, showing me actually no compassion during that brief period in which I was home free, if I summarize that without going too far off the rails. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about all the videos where he's there with the camera. He's confronting the mayor. He's filming the police. He's filmed the police, Kyle, about 10,000 times. But like with some of these people, there's no accountability for their own actions. And so they're running around accusing the police of everything. They're running around accusing everyone, the government, of everything, but they refuse to look at their own actions and how they themselves have placed judgment or have been accusatory or have acted in a irrational manner or have treated someone with disrespect. And ultimately, when we bring this back down to the so-called controlled left, here they're all calling Grand a Nazi, Grand a Nazi, Grand a Nazi, but were they themselves kind enough to an Alex Ansary when I fucking lived there? That's all I'm asking. Because all I wanted was a place to fucking park. And as I try to not bring up my own situation, I lived there. And I was born there. And at one point, I myself ran around with a megaphone. The difference is, I don't want to sound like I'm a know-it-all. When I ran around with the megaphone, the things that were coming out of my mouth was, our city is becoming federalized. We're coming under their control. It's both left and right. And there's a bigger story behind 9/11. And what this means is there's trouble coming to Portland. There's global conflict coming, and Portland will be affected more than any other place. These are the types of things that my talking points that I would cycle through. And lo and behold, those are my same talking points today. So what I'm saying is I tried, and I went out there in Portland, and I said and I did things that at the time I would be afraid that it was going to draw Homeland Security to start surveilling me. And the last thing that I ever wanted was to become a statistic, like so-and-so, Alex Yancey was disappeared on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what I saw was people were actually afraid. They told me they were afraid to take me in or be my friend because of the fear of what the government would do to them. This is the thinking back in 2008 during George Bush. This is how far back I'm going. So during Bush's Patriot Act, he had people crapping their pants so big, turds. That people were thinking that if I was to actually live in their household, they would cause a national security thing. Well, here we are, how many years later since then? 2007, so almost 10 years, right? I don't yet hear from Alex. We thought you were like an agent. Now we see you're living off the grid. We're sorry for being rude to you. Or Alex, we thought. So the Portland mindset hasn't shown itself to really have much of a memory either. It just seems to be this reactive ball of anger, And whether you're looking at someone batting from the left or batting from the right, it doesn't really matter. It's controlled chaos. And so, geez, I really don't know what else to say, but I'll pause.
Okay. Well, yeah. Let me just. There's a couple different things I think you pointed out there very importantly. One of which would be that I think you're pointing out the lack of integrity, the fact that there's no, and like you said, there's no memory. Right, there's this eternal process of forgetting, and that really is kind of the tyranny that's really enslaving these people in a lot of ways, is because they refuse to remember. They don't remember who they really are, and the fact of the matter is that if they did, I suspect that maybe not all, but many of them would honestly try and at least kind of fix themselves, at least in some sense. But because there's this eternal forgetting, they're living almost in an amoeba-like state where it's hear no evil, see no evil. Speak no evil, except, of course, the irony of that is that they're doing evil. And that's just kind of the long and short of it. I think there was also another video, too, I think that might be illustrative of this, that's on your channel, too. This one was called, now this one I think was uploaded on October 20th of 2016. It reads, police forcefully eject pepper spray protesters from Portland City Hell upon Mayor Hall's orders. I'll probably play maybe a minute or two of this.
If you could imagine a nice restaurant with white tablecloth and the trashiest, loudest people coming in going, well, it's one of them nice places. And they got a 40 of Mad Dog 2020 and the guy's chewing on a chicken wing and everybody's looking at him okay. You can play a little bit of that background if it's still rolling. The lady screaming, that was Sarah Long. And so she's been running around with Mike Smith and Robert West. Robert West is the Cop Watch channel. I watch it for entertainment, but they represent that demographic of Portland that believes that it's okay to stop traffic, and that if someone tries to push their way through, they're guilty of attempted manslaughter. And so if they're guilty of attempted manslaughter in their eyes, why not smash their windshield or something to that effect? And so that's why you're seeing an increase in the property damage of the vehicles. Is that mindset they're guilty of attempted manslaughter if they try to drive through. And as I said earlier, one of the men that was doing that has been arrested and charged with sex with a minor. Now, you also heard in that tape, when black lives are under attack, what do? He's the only black face out of a group of 30 people. So, he just hung on to a chant that just sounds good, and the cameras are there. And I'm not saying there's nothing to his cause that has no merit. I'm saying, like, there's 30 white people there with him. And that's kind of, like, out of place. The megaphone. What do? Well, it's not like you're, like, a big mob on a bridge, dude. They're pushing you out of a building because they called recess at City Hall. And they're saying, like, and what they'll do is they'll go in, hands up, don't shoot, at City Hall. So even like with Occupy, where it was Occupy, I say, and the crowd follows. For those that are able to follow what I'm saying, Occupy, they were doing a lot of people following the leader with the chanting. And I noticed in Portland, where Occupy took off the minute it did in Wall Street, like coordination, you had people doing that chanting stuff, teaching people how to be protesters at the waterfront. And so all that stuff is just...
Well, how much of it is legitimate?
It's not a Trump-related thing, that video. That was regarding the police union contract. Again, people observing Portlanders don't know that there are other protests going on that have nothing to do with Donald Trump.
Right, and that's just kind of unfortunate. So, like, how much of this so-called protesting is even legitimate or genuine and all that?
That's how they're behaving about local issues. Is what I'm getting at. And so you have a very small minority that would be like the intellectuals amongst them. Like who amongst the protesters are like the talk show hosts or intellectuals? Well, they don't actually have any. I left. I used to be one of them. And I never really got into the intellectual, try to talk sense to the mayor. I wanted to grow into that role. And I never matured into that role. But it was a goal of mine and a dream of mine to be a regular City Hall attendee and to give that mayor a piece of my mind for 3 minutes and to come back with another issue. Instead, you have people that are going that route to where it's their time. They speak beyond their time. They use foul language. They force the mayor to tell them to shut up, and they make it a free speech issue because they want to say fuck on TV so bad. So they make it an issue over the technicality of the First Amendment instead of just fucking focusing on an issue.
Right, they tried to divert a bunch. And speaking about that video you just mentioned, I just pulled it up. It says Alex Ansary warns the Portland City Council about federal intrusion. This was on April 21st of 2010, where you basically testified before then. So this is about 3 minutes long.
Military, naval, and homeland security presence in the city.
Good morning. Welcome to the City Council chambers.
My name's Alex Chancery.
Fuck you all.
Mayor Adams and members of the council.
I'm just kidding.
I'm here today to share my concerns for the safety and security of Portland in light of the direction that our nation is going at this time. In a YouTube.com video posted in January 2009, Mayor Adams said, and I quote, "I know I made big mistakes and I ask you for your forgiveness. I pledge to you I will work harder than I have ever worked before to make sure Portland meets its challenges." And I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's why I'm here. I'm here to discuss some of those challenges that I feel that our city is going to be facing in the future, such as the federal takeover of our beloved city when a certain type of national disaster or state of emergency is declared by the executive branch of the U.S. government. Time does not allow me to document already what has been proved to be facts, such as numerous reports of hundreds of thousands of U.S. troops incrementally being redeployed to operate under the command of NORTHCOM in the event of civil unrest. What time does allow is the point to be made that although your predecessor, Tom Potter, is no longer the mayor, the clandestine plans for continuity of government in Portland remain firmly intact. Top Off 4 stands for Top Officials 4. This was the huge federally funded anti-terror drill that took place in our city between October 15th and the 19th, 2007. On the surface, official story, this was a simulated joint response to a terrorist dirty bomb attack, capitalizing on the fear generated by the events of 9/11. The same day that our government is used to justify the deaths of well over 1.4 million innocent people in Iraq and Afghanistan. In reality, it was another example of a taxpayer-funded exercise in the millions, where multiple alphabet soup agencies of the U.S. government, including the CIA and DOD and FBI, practiced directing the city of Portland's emergency response. At a press conference at PIR, Governor of Oregon, Ted Kulongoski, jokingly said in a statement posted on Willamette Week's YouTube channel that this has been a great exercise for me. I'm actually going to fall into a trap and something serious is going to happen to me, and I'll have to trigger the succession clause of the Constitution, who becomes the governor in a time of emergency. I've been told the only thing I have to worry about is when they start putting the rubber gloves on. That's a quote from our governor. Moving forward to late 2008, Oregon Representative Peter DeFazio voiced his concerns about the real plans for continuity of government before the House floor in Congress. DeFazio protested the fact that as a member of the Homeland Security Committee, he was not allowed to see the plans, raising concerns that perhaps this was because of what truly lies in those plans, something that the public would find alarming. Portland, Oregon also had black helicopters swarming on Monday, August 25th, 2008, which alarmed people that didn't know what was going on. And the former mayor authorized live fire and live rope insertion and other things. In conclusion, I ask the city council to stand with the people, not the federal government, because you may very well be the city council when this hits the fan. And so I ask you to stand with the Bill of Rights and Constitution and be very, very careful about what money you take from the federal government, because that money comes with strings attached. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, sir.
So yeah, that's very interesting, and I don't think any of the other Portlanders were really talking about any of that other kind of stuff whenever they had their limited time in basically testifying.
So it seemed like when I was megaphoning in 08, 09, 010, my rhetoric was definitely like warnings of World War III and huge concerns about Homeland Security activity within Portland, Oregon. That slanted me, painted me as a conspiracy theorist in the eyes of the so-called controlled left. So like when the women would see me or people around town, I was that dude. Like kind of like that wild belligerent guy at the party. I was that dude. I was Mr. Black Helicopter. And it wasn't that, hey, I'm trying to be Alex Jones. It's like, wait a minute. I'm like a chapter of what is good about Alex Jones based in Portland, Oregon. On Access TV discussing quote unquote the police state. And then lo and behold, for the 4 years after I start my show, Kyle, black helicopters swarm Portland, Oregon, literally, and it was front page The Oregonian. So I'm like, here I am. I already have a few years under my belt. And instead of that kind of like backing up some of my things, like, wait a minute, we're becoming more of a police state. There's federal surveillance over our cities. There's Alex Jones talking about the blimps, and then the media would be attacking him. So I'm saying this, back in the day, people like him were bringing up good stuff that people should thought a little bit more about. Now, so much he's joined the system. We'll talk about that more, as these podcasts go on, the co-opting the liberty movement. But during that time, again, that and the surveillance society stuff was considered conspiracy theory. So, yeah, so when people find my videos critical of Trump and they think like I'm some typical libtard and they go, oh, well, no wonder, Alex is from Portland. They don't understand. The Portland people rejected me because of my ideals. Now, today, I'm willing to say that there are probably more Portlanders that are aware of those issues. But I don't hear from them. They don't write to me going, hey, Alex, we remembered you back in the day, and to be honest with you, we were kind of dicks to you for being outside of our left paradigm. You were kind of right about some of the stuff. They don't do it.
But
why don't they do
it? Well, it's a crap game.
Ego.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a crap game, isn't it? Because I think the Trump supporters that basically hate your guts for one reason or another don't care about the fact that you've been ostracized by the other locals there in Portland, whether they be socialist types or not.
They don't care that I'm saying to them they're a lot like the left, which is what I'm saying to them. The way that they're acting like the left.
Well, it was interesting too because over these past 8 years, like I've been ridiculed as a right winger, and then just recently I've been called a libtard a few times. So really, that's kind of the disingenuousness of the entire system and the scientifically proven irrational American voters, the electorate, who do this kind of crap, which is that basically based upon whether the current El Presidente has an R or a D after their name, then depending on whether or not you support or oppose him, basically our elected king, because that's what it really is in a sense, then depending on whether you support or oppose him, then that means that you must be for the authoritarian left or the totalitarian right.
Oh, by the way, they were burning the flag in Portland in 2000. So this is not like new stuff. I just get concerned when I see people, saying that Portland should be nuked because people have political views and they're participating in First Amendment protected behavior. And so I just want to point that out. Will Donald Trump, will the establishment, if they're playing a false flag, will they target Portland to punish Portland because of its actions? It's always been in my mind. What's been in my mind is that it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. This goes back to Portland being called Little Beirut because of the way that it responded when Bush came to town. I can tell you that was a big time of my awakening, though, to the whole thing of what's going on. 2002, 2003, we're talking about 9/11 happening, and then people waking up also as the war started. So some people have some spiritual perspectives that at least Bush and some of these misleaders have done their part to help wake people up. Although I don't really think people are all that awake, but I've heard that argument, and that could be argued, that by this stuff happening, it brings some of the stuff out into the open. So Portland's a place to where it's just intense, and I don't really want to get into the solar flares in this particular podcast, but I'll tell you, it was there in Portland that I started to see how there is just like a waning and a waxing to human behavior. When we look at protests, there are more protests during solar maximums. And there's a lady by the name of Carol Moore who wrote about this. It's called Activists and Sunspot Strategy, or Sunspots and Activist Strategy. It's an old paper she wrote in the 90s or 2000s. And so when she's talking about seeing a rise in unrest during certain periods, I look at today's world and I see that mirroring itself. Now, mind you, we're going into solar minimum, but we do have these periodic geomagnetic storms, basically, caused by the solar flares. And the intensity of those storms can still be strong during solar minimums, especially if there hasn't been a solar flare for some time. So I know I'm speaking way over people's heads, but I'm really, really not trying to. Again, I've noticed this in the 2000s, massive protests. I noticed things were quiet, and I was really able to get a lot done during the solar minimum period. And then I noticed people started to act like they were becoming unhinged, and I felt like there was more negative encounters between myself and other people, more judgment as the solar cycle slowly kicked off gradually in 09, 10, and 11. And so, despite the fact this is way over people's heads, I don't think it's going to be over everyone's head. It's not just the full moon. It really is things as simple as the sun. That doesn't just affect crop or agricultural output. It seems to strongly affect the stock market, cycles of war and peace, and civil unrest, and periods where the population seems to be fairly apathetic also.
Well, it's kind of this odd. It's right. Kind of this odd going back and forth between apathy and then acting like what was the term? I think either you or someone else used, but like crazy monkey behavior, or something to that effect.
To segue to crazy monkey behavior, it seems that it's cyclical when you have a spike of attempted sexual assaults or men running around with a rigid erection. Stories like that, for example, extreme primal monkey, return to nature, act like you've lost your mind, and your own basal behavior. Stuff like that is periodic, where you might see a spat of stories like that, 3 in a single weekend during a solar flare. But yet I've never seen another Portland intellectual, statistics student or professor, or person who's interested in astrology or metaphysics connect the dots in such a way. And so what I can say is not only did I start thinking about those things in Portland, I see Portland as a good example of the solar impact upon our world. And so what I'm saying is this ongoing unrest is part of a cyclical thing. And there are periods where things calm down and there's no protests like that for weeks to months. And then all of a sudden it'll start moving along. So I'm not going to call people useful idiots. I'm going to call them individuals that are acting like they're on autopilot. And also, when you go back and you're hearing me talk about the 2010 protests and talking to the anarchists, there was a big solar flare days before that whole thing. They were responding to the shooting of an unarmed man at that time. And the name, it might have been Aaron Campbell. I believe it was Aaron Campbell. And I remember that I was already like at least 2 years into looking at this whole solar thing. So it's like it was hailing that morning, which is not normal, but abnormal. The moment I'm reading about an ongoing geomagnetic storm on the internet at spaceweather.gov and spaceweather.com, I'm looking outside and it's hailing. And I'm looking at the news and there's talks of a massive, massive protest of anarchists. They're going to be smashing stuff downtown. Solar flares, hail, unrest to the point of property destruction in a city called Portland, Oregon, that is located near the west coast of the United States, which is referenced by a Greg Braden, and he's writing about 0 point. Now I'm going way above people's heads. So Greg Braden has a hypothesis that there is this 0 point line. I don't mean 0 point energy or nothing Tesla-ish about this. I think we're talking like latitude, longitude. I need like someone that's really into the science of the planet's layouts to go deeper into this. But he's suggesting that there's something about the 0 point that runs around the planet or the west coast of the United States, really off into the ocean, and it goes around the planet through Middle Eastern countries, including Egypt. And he says it's those parts of the planet that go through or experience the greatest change. And I would agree with Greg Braden saying whether that change is positive or negative, eye of the beholder kind of a thing. One man's treasure is another man's, I also came up with a new quote today. One man's fear porn is another man's hope. So that's a new one.
Well,
with regards to solar flares. So what I'm saying is Portland is on that artery line of energy. And I don't mean ley lines. Some people get into Illuminati ley lines that go across the country. That's not necessarily what I mean. I mean something that goes upwards and along the west coast, along the ocean. So my hypothesis is that during these energy changes and or full moons and or other astrological things in which I don't understand, for some reason, the people that live in Portland, and we're mostly made of water as humans, the energies of whatever is going on with full moons and solar flares, some of those people lose their shit. That's all. It could also be like an evolution, like they're shedding their skin and they're just acting out. And who's to say that they're really doing the work? I'm not talking about blocking traffic, but people that just get more active and they start moving and, they start doing a lot of crazy things. And I don't necessarily mean activism stuff. I mean just music and moving around and going, whoa, making a bunch of monkey sounds. They're like responding primally to like the sounds of the heavens almost. But if they're living down in Babylon and they're basically living in a fucking toilet, then instead of having an enlightened experience, they might try to start a riot or a fire. And I'll pause there.
Well, speaking of emotional volatility, I think I think maybe we should take a few moments here and talk about flags. In one of those earlier clips where the woman was screaming, actually there's several, one of the ones that were just played a bit ago with women screaming, which apparently seems to maybe be a common feature of Portland protest scene or whatever the hell. But like one of them, I definitely saw the syndicalists with their flag, which of course is half black, half red, because they used to be called the anarcho-communists, now called syndicalists. And they follow a more European tradition of claiming to want no government, but then, of course, they don't value private property, and I can't emphasize that strongly enough. Now, what was interesting was that there was another a video on your channel. I'm going to play only about a minute or two of this, but it's called Gang of Men Attack Flag Burners in Portland, Oregon. This was mirrored on July 7th, 2016.
I
As long as the other option? At this point, I'm trying to yes. Don't do your fucking. We're saying it's about the government.
You hate America so much. You hate America so much. Go live in Mexico for 24 hours. Tell me how awesome their government is. Tell me about their freedom. Tell me about Argentina.
Right, this is Lady Patriot talking. Lady Patriot.
Argentina. Do you know anything about Argentina?
They're like the controlled left confronts the controlled left. Wait, controlled right
Mexico for a couple of
confronts
years and it's
controlled
pretty
left.
nice,
Okay,
actually.
then go back to Mexico. Pledge your allegiance to Mexico.
I'm not pledging my allegiance to any country. I don't think they make you do that in Mexico.
You hate America so much that you're gonna stand here.
I don't even believe America exists any longer.
Then go back to Mexico.
I don't think America exists any longer, practically. I think America was sold down the river by the secret government in the 1980s with the Iran-Contra. You know about the... Yeah, there you go. See what happens. James! Hey, you're just a crap!
This is what's funny. The cop haters are calling for the police because they're being fucked with by the Patriots.
You don't touch me. Don't fucking touch me.
Get out of the store, you put your fucking hands on me! No! You get your hands off other people and I don't get my hands on you!
I cannot. You touch me, motherfucker. You touch me again. You the fuck out of line. No shit, I'm gonna get in between
Go back to where the fuck you came from! Don't put your hands on me! I've had no problem with you! And walk the fuck away! I know it's a free country!
She yells at another woman to go back where she came from or something like that is what I got.
Well, obviously, there's more of that, but yeah, just to kind of verbally describe a little bit. Yeah, at one point they're talking about burning a flag or maybe not burning a flag. Then somebody actually tries to burn. I think it was their own flag, not somebody else's. And then basically the scuffling and all that is essentially where some of the
the Portland police are way too tolerant with allowing the threatening behavior. Is what I also just want to throw in. Like they're watching all that. They're right there. But it's all free speech. But it's not free speech when you have people saying, well, if you're going to do this, I'm going to take your property. You can't burn that. I'm going to jack you. And that going back and forth, from what I can tell, the video, one moment it's the daylight, next video it's pitch black darkness. So obviously there's a transpiring of, say, an hour or an hour and a half to 2 hours, or maybe longer. Because I edited down something that was actually a much larger incident. And there's Robert West with probably 2 hours worth of footage and yelling. That was just a sample. So what I'm saying is that back and forth of what happened there was going on for hours with no one really intervening. And so that describes a lot of other situations in Portland where they're going back and forth. Like I've shown videos. I had a female friend visiting. I was showing her some videos of Portland. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe people are just sitting there arguing that long back and forth. And I'm trying to think of what it was. It was probably one of Kif Davis's many trips to City Hall. But it was just the fact that it was just going on and on and on like a negative loop feeding on itself. So I'm definitely curtailing myself from getting too supernatural and whatnot, really trying to be practical. But on that note, it is like a collective hive mind thing. Like caw, 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 every kind of annoying sound effect. There's that woman screaming, earlier. And then that's another thing that a female friend noted listening to that. And she's not from Oregon. She was watching in Texas going, what is that lady shrieking back and forth? You think that's going to make the cops if anything, it's going to make the cops want to fucking hit even harder.
Well, yeah.
So it's it's going a
Well, it's kind of just a crap show, isn't it? And so, and here's the other thing too, regarding that particular incident where somebody was, I think, trying to burn their own flag, not someone else's flag. There's actually been a derisive term that's been coined to describe some of the, flag wavers, which of course is flaggots, which is a portmanteau of faggot and flag, so flaggots. And so, yes, there were some flaggots there who, at one point, it was just verbal, which is fine. And then all of a sudden, when somebody tried to burn their own flag, again, that's private property and so forth, one of the flaggots, I think it was the guy with the black cowboy hat, basically reached in and was trying to grab and like save the flag. So what's very interesting, and a lot of the Trump supporters are that way too, of course. So it's very interesting that the Trump supporters, the right wingers, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, will make I'll admit very good points about the SJWs and their safe spaces. But oh my goodness, once Old Glory comes out, the roles switch. And that's the freaky part. Then all of a sudden the flaggots, the Trump supporters and company will then say, oh, we need to protect the flag because the piece of cloth is so precious. And it's like, well, wait a minute, look. If someone is stealing your flag, then obviously that's a violation of property rights. However, if one of the black bloc syndicalists is going to burn their flag, then that's their property. Don't then trespass and try and grab his flag. But you see, Alex, this is why I can't get along with the political crusaders and their advocacy for Trump or anybody else for that matter, is because they're constantly violating property rights. And so as bad as the black bloc syndicalists have been when they violated property rights, whenever they smashed in store windows and otherwise causing ruckus on the streets, one of the very few times when they're actually adhering to some degree of property rights, when they're actually burning their own flags, their property rights get violated by the flaggots and such. So it's this constant back and forth of pretty much you have a lot of people in a public commons that is more or less administered by the government or maybe even owned by the government. There's some kind of conflicting legal evidence regarding which one's which. But otherwise, it's government-involved property of some kind, even where this scuffle took place, never mind all the others I was playing, like at the City Hall and such, which, of course, is a government building. And then you have a constant violation of private property rights constantly. And thus there's all this discourse.
And the focus, their attention is diverted from anything local. They're fighting about a flag, an arbitrary thing or object. You could say a national issue or a global issue, but something that essentially has nothing to do with Portland, although it was on the 4th of July, but really essentially nothing to do with anything going on around them, crime issue, homeless issue, housing issue, fill in the blank. So they may have localized angst regarding space issues or other things. And they're there, though, with their political thing to be in the fight, flight. And I didn't want to completely cut you off, but I just also want to mention they may have seen a Facebook event announcing the fact that they were there. In other words, the flag burners doing their First Amendment, but also publicizing that for maybe the possibility, whether they thought about this or not, of attracting someone or a gang of 5 guys that are going to basically say, no, we're going to shut you down. Because there were so many of them. I think I counted like 5 of them or 6. I don't know if they were just down there for fireworks.
Well, yeah, and it's just kind of like, I don't know, man. It's the controlled schizophrenia. It's the fact that for libertarians, the choice really is between freedom and neurosis. And I think what you're pointing out here is that whether it's people who are just statist authoritarian types or even some of the libertarians, arguably somebody like Mike Bluehair, who has apparently given up on whatever principles he seemed to have, then it's neurosis of some kind. And so that's kind of the problem. If you have a lack of integrity and you become a hypocrite, then everything from that point forward is going to be an automatic failure. I mean, hell, even look at the Patriot movement, such as it is. I mean, they've abandoned all their principles of limited government, such as they were, which of course I have my own concerns about. But now that's not even so much of an issue as it is the fact that they're claiming, even in private conversations, Alex, I haven't really talked about this publicly myself, but former colleagues of mine, more than a handful. So I've lost people thanks to El Presidente, so I've got my own gears to grind about that one.
Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and talk about that next in the next podcast. For those listening to this, we're going to talk about Donald Trump in the next podcast. But yeah, when people are looking at Portland, I guess finishing up my thoughts here, it seems to be a testing ground. What did I say when I was in Portland? It's being socially engineered for the new humans. So there's actually a culling process of the real Portlanders, if I haven't said that already. There is a good organic part of Portland that made Portland great, and it's like the energy vampires came, and they're changing it into something else. It's almost as if an evil's taken over, and we can see it really socially in just this mindless bickering and arguing. And so there's a lot more I can say, but really I would actually now reference my past work, like the Real Portlandia TV show, where I'm actually discussing the Real Portlandia as opposed to what's in the TV show. My top off 4 coverage, my commentary on the ongoing zombie apocalypse, how in the city of actual zombies, they ironically are really big into an annual zombie dance, to where many Portlanders take to the streets, they put zombie makeup on, and they dance to Thriller. And I understand this is a nationwide thing, maybe it's going on in Austin, but I really offended a lot of Portlanders when I said that art imitates life. What they're doing is they're being Freudian with it, or they're coming out like reverse speech. It's like on Halloween where people really dress up like the inner spirit animal that they really wish they were. Like that song from Ministry, Every Day is Like Halloween. It's like an old song from the 80s. Portland is weird because Portland is somewhat of a portal, you could even say, to another world. And the people that it draws there are almost beyond this world. That doesn't necessarily make them inherently evil. It means that those people that live in Portland are prone to wild emotional displays of their consciousness. Kyle, any last statements that you want to make on the Portland thing now that you've been exposed to just how many videos today that you played and went through? 5, 6? And my last statements on that is when I watch those videos, I can feel the energy. I can feel empathetically the insanity of what's going on in that video, and how even though I may care about the issue that they care about, I feel that they're not on the solution path. They're like part of this controlled chaos reality.
Yeah, I think you're on point on that. And so, yeah, in terms of something like strategic relocation, well, I know where I'm definitely not going, when the grid goes down, whether it be temporary or maybe even permanent if it's more of a Teowatki type situation. So, yeah, I mean, if these people are acting this infantile and this loony and this controlled schizophrenic or cognitive impairment, or pick a label that describes the behavior of one facet or another, yeah, if they're acting this way and the grid is still up, they're acting this way and there isn't a military foreign invasion, they're acting this way and things are, as bad as central banking is, technically you can still use your Federal Reserve notes and buy groceries, folks. And they're acting this way now when things could be arguably much worse. My goodness, how much worse would it get when, they get a little rumbly in their tummy? When, if they happen to have children and those kids are like, Mommy, I haven't eaten in 2 days. People do things when they're in pain that are not good for you and your family, especially if they happen to cross you. And so, yeah, I would just, I don't know, maybe Portland is a microcosm of the macrocosm regarding all these cities of one kind or another that most of the population is living in these days.
Yeah, I could have said it better. It's a great place to end it. What would the Portlanders do, or what will they do when the great earthquake comes, which is long overdue, or when the lights really go out? I'm Alex Ansary with our special guest, Kyle Rearden, for our latest Liberty Intelligence Files podcast for February 4th, 2017.